Fluid coding and AI here. AWS just turned its agent tooling into a first-party toolkit, and the real question is not whether agents can touch the cloud. It is whether cloud agents are finally getting serious enough controls to trust. The pain is familiar. A coding agent knows old AWS, misses a newer service, overuses shell commands, and sometimes writes infrastructure that looks plausible but ignores least privilege or production observability. The promise of Agent Toolkit is that the agent can discover current AWS guidance before it acts, then operate through paths that an organization can actually govern. AWS announced Agent Toolkit for AWS on May 6, 2026 as a production-ready suite for AI coding agents building on AWS. It packages 4 pieces: the AWS MCP server, curated skills, installable plugins, and project rules files. AWS says this succeeds the earlier AWS Labs MCP servers, plugins, and skills, while those Labs projects continue to work and accept contributions. The managed MCP server is the center of the story. AWS says it covers more than 300 AWS services and more than 15,000 API actions through one authenticated endpoint. At launch, the endpoint regions are Northern Virginia and Frankfurt, but the server can make API calls to other AWS regions. Documentation search and skill discovery work without authentication. API calls and script execution use existing AWS IAM credentials. The skills part is more subtle than a bigger prompt. AWS describes skills as curated instruction and reference packages for specific AWS tasks. Think of them as official cloud runbooks. The agent can pull into context when the task needs them. That matters because the alternative is the model improvising from memory, stale docs, or whatever happened to fit inside the conversation. Plugins are the installable package layer. The documented plugin names include AWS Core, AWS Agents, and AWS Data Analytics. Rules files are the part many teams should not skip. AWS documents project instructions that tell agents to use AWS MCP, discover skills before starting, verify against AWS docs, and prefer infrastructure as code over direct CLI mutation. That is not flashy, but it is exactly the kind of friction cloud automation needs. The easiest win is current AWS knowledge. AWS shows a demo where a model with a May 2025 cutoff misses Amazon S3 vectors without current documentation, then answers correctly when it can search AWS docs through MCP. Treat that as a product demonstration, not a benchmark. But the problem is real. Cloud APIs change faster than model training runs. The most practical tool is RunScript. Instead of making one tool call per API request, an agent can run a server-side Python script that chains AWS API calls, filters responses, and computes a result in one round trip. The sandbox does not expose the user's local file system or arbitrary network access, but it still operates under the permissions granted to the authenticated AWS session. The security shift is that AWS MCP requests can be visible as agent-originated activity. AWS automatically adds IAM condition context keys to downstream requests, including via AWS MCP service and called via AWS MCP. That lets administrators write policies that treat agent-initiated calls differently from human calls. For example, a user might be allowed to mutate resources directly, while MCP-originated requests are restricted to read-only behavior. AWS also points to CloudWatch metrics under the AWS MCP namespace, so teams can monitor tool usage and success rates separately from normal human activity. CloudTrail captures API calls for audit visibility. File operations are staged through pre-signed S3 URLs into the customer's own bucket when needed, and AWS says temporary processing uses encrypted ephemeral storage that is reclaimed within a maximum of 8 hours. Here is the skeptic section. AWS says the skills are evaluated and can improve accuracy, reliability, and token efficiency, but this research pass did not find public first-party scorecards with per-skill pass rates, token deltas, or reproducible evaluation artifacts. So the honest claim is narrower: AWS has built a more governed surface. Public evidence does not prove a universal performance jump. The broader skills ecosystem gives us a warning label. A 2026 paper on agentic skills says benefits can be fragile under realistic retrieval, although query-specific retrieval (Podman) can recover performance when the retrieved skills are relevant and high quality. Other research found large public skill collections with serious safety issues, and Snike's toxic skills study reported critical or security-relevant flaws across many scanned skills. That is not AWS specific, but it explains why curation matters. The conservative adoption path is read only first. Install AWS Core, use auto-renewing AWS SSO credentials, deny destructive MCP-originated calls with IAM or service control policies, and let agents search docs, inspect resource state, and draft infrastructure as code. Then require human review before mutation or deployment. That gets value from current AWS context without pretending the agent is ready for unsupervised production changes. So are cloud agent skills finally getting serious? For AWS, yes, in the important, boring way. Agent Toolkit adds managed MCP access, curated skills, installable plugins, project rules, IAM condition keys, metrics, audit trails, and sandboxed execution. That is the shape of a real enterprise control plane. But it is not a blank check. Start read-only, measure results on your own tasks, and keep approvals around anything that changes real infrastructure. If this helped you decide how to evaluate AWS Agent Toolkit, like the video and subscribe to Fluid Coding and AI. We will keep tracking where agent tooling becomes real engineering infrastructure and where it still needs a human in the loop.